Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective. Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Peter Fenger. My guest today is Erica Ligons. Erica is a licensed clinical psychologist, founder and CEO of Crush That Exam, and owner of the Velago Psychology in Chicago. After overcoming her own ADHD, severe test anxiety, and a history of struggling with standardized exams, she went on to pass the psychology licensing exam far above the required score and began helping others do the same. In 2019, she officially launched her coaching work to bring equity, structure, and confidence to overwhelmed test takers. Using her signature Snowball study method, Dr. Ligons helps students and professionals master content, calm anxiety, and truly crush their exams. I'm excited to have Erica with me today. We'll break down how test anxiety impacts performance, why traditional studying often fails anxious learners, and how coaching, mindset shifts, and her Snowball study method help people study smarter, rebuild confidence, and pass exams. Erica, I'm so excited to have you on my show today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to share all the joys that I have as a EPPP coach and share those insights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited as well to share with our listeners because I know, test anxiety is difficult among other things, right? And I know with your experience with psychology licensing exam, the EPPP, shaped your passion for exam coaching. But I'm also aware that you've had challenges, right? Like test anxiety, mastering content, et cetera. So share with our listeners a little bit about that experience and how your own test anxiety sort of shaped the coaching work that you would eventually put into Crush That Exam, your program.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, it was one of the most challenging times of my life going through preparing for the EPPP exam and confronting my own test anxiety.
Mhm.
And so for me, I had done poorly on standardized tests ever since early elementary school years. In fact, when I was in like the third or fourth grade, I scored so low on a standardized test that the results suggested that I be held back a year.
Oh my.
Yeah, it was terrible. But thankfully, because I performed okay in my grades, they were able to see that no, she's okay. She can keep up. But there was a lot that I had going on there, test anxiety as well as ADHD, which I
Yeah.
did not get formally diagnosed with until I was halfway through graduate school, which was many years later, which is experience for
Wow.
so many kids, especially kids of color, maybe don't always have a ton of resources. So there's a lot going on there. And then the situation only got worse. When I did the SATs, I scored maybe barely 1,000, which is not really a super competitive score if you're trying to get into stronger schools. And then with the GRE, it was even worse. In fact, I repressed my score. I don't even remember what it is because it was so bad. It was so upsetting. Only thing I remember is that it was so low that I knew I couldn't use that to try to get into school. So I purposely chose graduate programs that didn't require it.
Wow.
And same thing with the SATs. I had to really rely a lot on grades and extracurriculars and strong recommendations to try to compensate for my really poor performance on standardized tests. So you
Yeah.
can imagine going into studying for the EPPP where now I can't utilize recommendations or performance or these other things to justify my stance as a licensed psychologist. I have to pass the test.
Yes.
So the anxiety that I felt was so debilitating that whenever I tried to sit down to study, I would have crying spells, racing thoughts. I couldn't think clearly. I would try to read. I couldn't understand what I was reading. My mind would go blank. I would become physically ill, even had a few panic attacks. I mean, it was crushing. Even the sight of the books could elicit those feelings. And this is not even on test day. This is just sitting down to study. I was having these intense experiences. And so this went on for months, me avoiding studying, going in and out of studying, because it was just so emotionally stressful for me. So
Yeah.
that
Wow.
terrible experience really guided how I go about coaching now.
Yeah. And you know what? It really it takes one to know one, right?
Right.
Your testing anxiety is also my experience. I did not do
Mm,
well in standardized testing. And I think it really wasn't until you're explaining this story that I recognized like there's probably a lot of test anxiety. Like it wasn't just my intelligence. There's a little bit more. And it's not that you don't understand the content or you can't perform the ability, the practice. It's that standardized testing can be very difficult, and understanding the exam is a completely different, and taking the exam is a completely different performance than, say, like performing the actual job as psychologist. So let's back up. Let's just define what is test anxiety, and from your experience, how do you see it show up in people's performance, in their body, in their brain? I know you did a really good job of describing some of those symptoms, but define it for us.
absolutely. So, tests in general cause anxiety for people, but the difference between test anxiety and just typical test day nerves couldn't be more different. So, most people, they're going to have some nerves when they're going into a test because there's some stakes involved. But when you are experiencing test anxiety, this is not just nerves. This is your mind and body literally feeling that it is under threat. It is a full stress response to a situation that you are perceiving as a threat. And the thing about our limbic system, which is where our fear center is, it's controlled by this little brain part called the amygdala, which senses our fear response and communicates with the rest of our body using our limbic system. The thing is, that part of the brain is a bit more simple and rudimentary. It doesn't have the ability to detect nuance as well as like other parts of your brain that are responsible for cognition. And so, if you believe that this test is a threat, that part fires and responds as if a bear is chasing you. Right? And so you're
Right,
going to
right,
have these intense physical, mental, and emotional responses as if you are in like basically a life or death situation. So people will have flight responses where they're just trying to fly through this test as fast as they can to get out of there because they literally feel like they're in danger,
right,
right? Or they're frustrated through the test, they're fighting with it, or they're just freezing and not even fully present. Just
right.
half what we call dissociated in a way because they feel that they're so under threat. And so these symptoms can appear both outwardly or it can be a very internal thing. So for me, I experienced a lot of the physical, the racing heart, the sweating, the shaking, the stomach issues, all of those kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
But for other people, they might experience it more internally. Maybe it's just more racing thoughts, rumination, mind going blank, inability to recall, to concentrate, just flooded with a lot of negative thoughts, or more subtle symptoms like their
Yes,
eyes are darting around and they can't kind of track and read as carefully.
yes,
And of course, tons of emotions, just feeling terrible, feeling scared, feeling
yeah.
stressed. And it really invokes your whole body. I mean, your cortisol levels start spiking. I mean, your whole body is going through this, whether you're consciously aware of it or not.
Mm. Yes. Yeah, yeah. And it can be so difficult to combat some of those sensations. It's just very hijacking, right? And if we could just give ourselves a little bit of a pause, we can get our brains rewired, getting it back online and kind of give us a little bit more presence in those moments. So I know that having anxiety, test anxiety, makes it really difficult for people to get ready to study. And in your experience, what are some of the mistakes that anxious test takers make when they are trying to study on their own?
Absolutely. So, this anxiety can really just overtake everything
Mm,
and it will completely guide the way that you're studying, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. So, one of the things that it does is it keeps you in a negative headspace,
mm,
causes you to have really negative beliefs that govern how you move while you're studying without you being aware of it. And so, for example, people's thought process, they might be going into studying with a mindset of, well, there's really no point or it doesn't really fully even matter how you study because everything depends on the version of the test you get. So imagine how that sets up your whole prep journey if
Right.
you fundamentally believe that nothing you're going to do really has any real impact on anything.
Right.
Imagine how that's going to impact how you show up to studying. For some people, that's demotivating and can cause them to understudy because, again, what's the point if you think you don't have any control over anything? Or people might fight against that and they're like, well, I'm going to study way harder because I need to compensate for that.
Right.
So either extreme is not good. I mean, I've seen people barely study at all. For an EPPP exam, experts recommend 300 to 400 hours. I mean, this is a very intensive and rigorous process. And sometimes I'm seeing people studying less than 50,
Wow.
or I'm seeing people study 700 hours and
Right.
totally cut out all self care and
Mhm.
totally lose themselves, which is also extremely problematic. Causes
Right.
burnout, depression, family issues because nobody ever sees you because you're studying all the time.
Right.
And
Right.
so that is a huge problem. Also, people, if they're not careful, their test anxiety will guide how they study in terms of where they focus their time. So,
Mhm.
most standardized tests have certain content areas that are more heavily emphasized than others.
Yes, because of how it's structured.
Right. So, you really need to be strategic on where you spend your time based on how the test is
Oh,
structured.
it's divided. Yeah.
But test anxiety throws all that out the window. So you might, for example, find yourself overstudying content areas that are not actually highly represented on the test
Right.
because they gives you anxiety. Like statistics and research is the arch nemesis of a lot of mental health professionals. It's not our favorite thing for a lot
Right.
of people. So they might overstudy that, even though it represents like this much of the test.
Right.
Or people study things that they like or things that they enjoy because it feels safer, it feels easier, it feels more soothing than digging into topics that aren't their strengths. Also, people don't use practice tests effectively, they take them too
Mhm.
soon in their journey, or sometimes they avoid them altogether, which
Mhm.
puts them at a very strong disadvantage on test day because they didn't get a chance to practice. Though there's many others I could share, but I'm just going to share one more for this moment. And
Please.
that is wanting the real test to look like the practice exams.
Mm.
Obviously, when we feel anxious, we feel out of control, right? So it makes us want to have more control. So we want things to look really familiar.
Right.
Because another thing that test anxiety does is it breaks down your ability to think critically and to bring concepts together. So you want things to be as straightforward as possible, right? And so people get very fixated and will even jump from program to program, trying to find the perfect program that's going to look exactly like the exam,
Right.
instead of sitting with the fact that it's really more about understanding content and
Right.
sharpening your critical thinking skills so that no matter how questions are presented, you can read, interpret, and apply the information that you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. You're right. Because, it is important to simulate the exam in a sense that, we want to replicate how the questions are formatted and give you practice exams that can appear or can simulate the exam. But, to be so focused on having that 1-to-1 ratio is not the point of it. It's not the
No.
point. And you've outlined so many good points about mistakes that anxious test takers might run into, right? Talking about work-life balance. You're talking about how they might divide their study time. But I know you've created the Snowball study method. So explain what that is and why that works so well for overwhelmed or anxious learners.
Absolutely. This is the main reason why I was able to pass the test. And just to, for context for people who
Yeah.
are listening, I mean, I had a lot of barriers having ADHD, test anxiety, and also identifying as a person of color. You know, statistically, I only had a 34% chance of passing this test on the first try as someone who identifies as African American. The odds were really stacked against me.
Mm.
And with, however, using the snowball study method for exam prep that I created, I was able to pass on the first try with a score of 659, and you technically only need a 500. And
Yes.
I'm telling you, it's because of this system that I created. So, just to give an overview of what it is, it's perfect for people who don't learn easily, as well as those who do, because it sets you up in a way to kind of protect you against the mistakes you would make if you have high test anxiety, while also incorporating elements that make learning easier for people who don't always learn easily.
Mm.
So, because our program is all about inclusivity, the Snowball Study Method, there are two versions of it, an A plan and a B plan.
Okay.
The A plan is a bit more aggressive. It's for those who like to learn more quickly, maybe those who learn more easily, or who are able to put more time into studying up front. And the B plan, which is what most of our community uses, is more flexible, it's more gentle, and it allows people to study at a more gentle pace that works for them. So, off the
Mm.
bat, inclusivity here.
Mm.
Next, each plan has distinct phases with goals for each phase. So it's highly structured. You know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and both plans emphasize putting your time and energy into the areas of the test that matter the most.
Mm.
So we don't fall into just letting our emotions take over. We follow the structured plan, but each plan does have the ability to be altered or modified as you're going because life happens. People
Right.
aren't perfect. And
Yes.
so it strikes a nice balance between being structured but still flexible, which is so
Mhm.
important for neurodivergent people and non traditional students who don't have super simple lives,
Right.
right? And what also holds everything together is that both plans incorporate spaced practice. See, most
Mm.
people are used to massed practice, also known as cramming. they're,
Yeah.
they're studying in a short burst of time, trying to accumulate a lot of information. And maybe that worked okay when you were in college or even graduate school. But
Right.
for the EPPP exam in particular, you're studying 11 different subjects at the same time. You cannot cram this thing. It requires diligent practice and focus. And so the theory of space practice incorporates multiple review sessions over time for all of the different domains to ensure that you truly master them and retain the information over the
Mm.
course of your study journey so that by test day, you're ready to go.
Yeah, I know retention is such a critical piece. And I know that there are a few ways that we can assist with retention, but has your program specifically work in that area?
Right, to help people maintain the
That's
information.
right. Yes.
Absolutely. So with the space practice and the structure of the snowball method, we
Hmm.
have you focusing on the areas that are most important at
Hmm.
the outset of your journey and repeatedly over time until
Okay.
you take the test so that you're constantly refining and improving. And I've coined a little term, the snowball effect, which is
Yeah.
as you continuously review things over time,
Hmm.
the information starts to lock in
Mm.
little by little. So it
Yeah.
requires patience. But if you stick with it, you start to see it layering, and the snowball, aka your content knowledge, just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And once you get to that tipping point, it feels like it almost accelerates.
Right, because as you're understanding the content, the comprehension starts to fit, things start to click into place a little bit more. Your testing scores are going to improve as familiar content gets locked in, that piece is just going to kind of accelerate.
Absolutely. Once you
Yes.
have the main pieces, those little details start filling in,
Mm.
and then the next thing you know, you feel really confident. And
Mm.
that's why I love, like, when I've worked with repeat test takers, they oftentimes don't know why they've been failing. They didn't often realize just how underprepared they really were until they did our program, really got prepared, and then could feel the difference of like, oh, this is what mastery really looks like. So
Right,
it's super
right.
fun watching that process.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Share a little bit more about some of the other services, because I know you've got a pretty structured program and you're queuing up practice questions to reference content. But I know that there are a couple other services that deal with mindset shifting and pairing for body doubles. Talk a little bit about those services.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. We've been around for some years now. And
Yeah.
when I first started coaching, I did it in the very traditional way, just one-to-one sessions once per week. But very quickly, I started to realize people need more. This
Mhm.
process is extremely isolating. Once you're out of school, you just kind of feel like you're floating out there and you really need community and you need more support than 1 hour a week because this is coming at the end of a very long journey. People are burnt out, they're
Yes.
tired, especially if they've taken the exam before. They're over it, right? And so we need more support to hold you together. So we have built really an ecosystem of support. So not only do we have weekly sessions, but we've actually modified our program to be more of a hybrid approach. So we use more small group coaching and then couple that with one-to-one coaching as a person gets closer to their test date so that they get more personalized support. And what
Yeah.
this
Wow.
does is it gives you community, validation, support, and you're learning from each other. And then
Yes.
people develop relationships. They start texting each other, encouraging each other outside of session,
Yeah.
which is amazing to hear that. People develop relationships. Also, with the body doubling, this is one of the things that really holds our program together. In between sessions, you're combating life, stress, work, possibly kids, family, partnerships, a lot is going on. And so through body doubling sessions, we get on camera. We offer them all throughout the week, every day of the week, where we get on camera. Cameras are stay on, but microphones stay off, and we work silently
Mhm.
together. So it's virtual co-working. And
Yes.
what this does is it stimulates mirror neurons in your brain to copy what you're seeing. So you've heard the saying monkey see, monkey do, right?
That's right.
Well, that's your mirror neurons at work. So when you're working alongside other people and you glance up and you see people writing, working, reviewing their stuff, it signals to you this is work time, not
Mm.
playtime.
Yes.
Also, as humans, we like to look good. Okay. There's this thing called the Hawthorne effect, which is the idea that when you know you're being watched, you're more likely to behave. And so when you know people can see you, you're less likely to be playing on your phone,
Mhm.
getting up every 5 seconds for no good reason, getting distracted with chores and laundry and all these other things, letting family members distract you because people can see you.
Right.
So these two things come together and really help people to stay focused. And also that gentle presence of others who are in the same boat as you also helps to validate your experience. You connect with
Yes.
people, you share, hey, this is what I'm working on today. What are you working on? Maybe they're a repeat test taker, you're a repeat test taker. You're like, okay, that person has been through the fire and they're still showing up, so I can do it too.
Yes.
So those two pieces are really important. And a couple other pieces that I want to make sure I mention because they're so key. In order to start our coaching program, you go through an audio course which teaches you our entire method. It explains both snowball methods, plans A and B. It explains our test taking strategies, mindset stuff. It goes over everything. And there's a workbook that has you reflecting and learning and digesting what you're learning. And it's essentially like sometimes for courses, you have to, like in school, they might assign a reading that you have to do before you start the course to get you primed and ready to learn. And that's really what that course is about. But best of all, it's there for people throughout their entire journey. So whenever they need to refresh themselves on the plan, they can listen to it and they have access until they pass the exam, which is great.
Yes.
And through that, they're able to get their mind ready for this process so that we're speaking the same language.
Yes.
So then once we start coaching and virtual doubling sessions, everybody is just moving together in the same direction. And then we, of course, layer all of this with tons of community support. We have an online community where people can post questions and share. And we have monthly events where one of our alumni shares their story. You get to ask them questions and connect in the breakout rooms. And we've even started layering in-person events where
Wow.
people get to hang out. We have one coming up this month. We're going to be here in Chicago, and one's going to be happening in California. And as we grow, we're going to have them happening all over the country so that people can connect with people. Because
Mm.
sometimes, especially if you failed this test many times, maybe some of the people you went to school with have already passed and they've
Right.
moved on, and you just feel really alone. So being able to be in real life as well as virtually connecting with people who understand your situation, it helps to bring down the shame, the overwhelm, and the stress.
Yeah. Wow, there is so much that I love about what you're saying about this program. You're talking a little bit about the onboarding just so that they can sort of get acclimated to the program and what's sort of expected. But
Mm.
the accountability piece is incredible about, understanding that you're part of a community. We're all showing up for each other. I just think that you've created these features in your program that really allow people to block out time. It's not just I'm going to be studying from now to now. It's I've got this group event that's happening from this period, weekly, and I'm going to engage with it with everybody else. I know that a family will recognize a meeting a lot differently than, say, just regular work. And I
Yep.
think that that can really just be a different visual for family members to give you that space to recognize that this is the time to work, right?
To everyone that it's work time.
Yes, exactly. And I love the psychological intelligence that you're adding in that you're really like pulling from the material of the EPPP of utilizing some of these tools that will help us get into the mindset to become better workers, to become better studiers. So I'm loving what you're saying about the program. I'm kind of curious because I know you've done a really nice job of creating an orientation or a onboarding process. But what are some of the common questions that people ask before they begin your program?
Absolutely. So the first thing people always want to know, understandably so, how long is this going to take for me to study for
Yes.
this exam?
Mm,
And so here's the thing. Experts recommend 3 to 6 months on average. And our plans can be done in that time frame. But the amount of time it actually takes depends on you.
mm,
Depends on your mindset, your level of consistency, your ability to even might sound silly, but just being in radical acceptance that you have
mm.
to take this exam. Do you know how
Right.
many people will delay studying and fight the process just because they're upset that they have to do it?
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure there's a big population. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that can really clog up and take a lot of time. Also, your mental and emotional well being. We have to take care of ourselves. I strongly recommend that
Mm,
everyone is in their own personal therapy. And if they need medication to help with anxiety or
mm,
other things, attention issues, if that's recommended, that they do that, because those kind of things can also totally, totally change
mm.
everything. And that's one of the things, about our program, because I am a licensed psychologist. Obviously, I'm not my coaching client's therapist, but I have that background. So sometimes I will meet with them privately and say, hey, you know what? I think I'm seeing that you're having some attention issues or
Um,
things like that. Why don't we make sure that you get connected so you can get properly evaluated? And I've seen people in our program get diagnosed for the very first time in their life with
wow.
neurodivergence
Yeah.
because we
Wow.
took that time and care to see them as a full person, not just here are some test taking strategies, but really looking at what's getting in the way and supporting them. So people
Yeah.
always want to know how long. So if you want it to go faster, take care of yourself, work on your mindset, and accept that you have to do this.
Mm,
Another thing people want to know is how will I know when I'm ready? Especially if you've taken a test before and you failed. It can be so disheartening and confusing, especially if you thought you were ready and you weren't. And so that's one of the things I love about our program is that because it's so structured, we take you through a process to help you to really get ready. And there's a deep analysis that we do after every practice exam to break down your performance and to look for where you need to improve. And we are straight shooters. We're going to tell you if you're ready or not in the most kind and compassionate way so that you can go in there prepared. It's ultimately your
Yes.
choice to follow the recommendation or not, but you
Yes.
will always know if you're ready or not from our standpoint. And because we've been doing it for so long, we know when people, I can smell it when
Right.
people are ready and when they're not.
And you also have the knowledge of how to walk them through that process of delaying their exam. So it's a lot easier to delay your exam than it is to take it, fail, and then restart
Oh
it.
my gosh.
Yes.
Yes. So much easier because every time someone fails, that's a hit and it can take
Hmm.
time for them to recalibrate and get back up on that horse, as they say.
Yes.
And again, now more specific to our program, sometimes people are because they're used to coaching being a very certain way of just one-to-one sessions, sometimes they might be like, "Why do I need to do an audio program first?" And again, like I was saying before, it really is the prerequisite. It's pre-coaching. It's getting you
Mm.
ready for coaching.
Yes.
And a lot of our graduates will say they were so grateful because sometimes in between coaching sessions, they might get a little anxious or overwhelmed and then they have access to that 24/7. So they go back, re-listen, ground themselves, and then are able to continue with the process.
Mhm. Is there any advice that you might recommend to people who are actively in your program prior to those coaching sessions? Because I know that there can be like a lot of anxiety of just like, I have to feel prepared before I can go in and meet with this person and tell them that I'm feeling prepared. So, is there anything that you recommend prior to those meetings?
Absolutely. So the first thing I always tell people when you're listening to the master plan, it's there for you. That's the name of the audio course. It's
Hmm.
there for you for your whole journey. You don't have to master anything up front. It's about just getting an introduction to our process. And then that's where expert coaching comes in because we help you to walk it out.
Yeah.
So it's just there to get you oriented so that we're speaking the same language, and then we will support you to implement everything that is in there. So that's
Mhm.
the first thing. Don't not
Yeah.
too much pressure to walk in looking like you have it all together. In fact, we encourage people to just come as they are.
Mm.
You don't have to perform in coaching. You don't have to look like you have it all together. That's why you're here. You don't know what you're doing, but we do, and that's why we're excited to help you. The other thing that's super important is making sure we get your support system on board. As you
Mm.
can tell, we're clearly very community focused, and it's not just about providing you peer support. We need to make sure your family, friends, and loved ones are also on board. So we have a whole page on our website specifically for your family and friends, and there's a short video for each of them to watch depending on their relationship with you, whether
Oh,
they're your
wow.
partner, your child, a friend, a colleague, that walks them through how to support you, what
Yeah.
to say, what not to say, how
Mm.
they can show up. And we
Wow.
have a page for employers as well, because sometimes after you pass the test, you kind of put this behind you, you might forget what it's like to be in this journey. And so they can also go there and learn how to support. So it's really about getting your support system to understand as best as we can what you're going through and really just opening yourself up to the process.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Jane, a practice management software and EMR built to support you in the day-to-day work of running your business. If you're a health or wellness practitioner, you already know. The care you provide starts well before your patient arrives and extends far beyond the treatment room. Jane is here to support every part of that experience. With online booking, your clients can book at a time that works for them. And with features like waitlist notifications, they'll even be able to grab last-minute openings when they pop up. It's an easy way to keep your schedule full while giving your clients the care they need. During your appointment, Jane's AI-powered documentation feature can help you thoughtfully take notes so you can stay present with the person in front of you. And after appointments, you can end your time together on a healing note, not a transactional one, by charging the card on file and rebooking before they head out the door. To learn more about how Jane can support you and your clients, head to jane.app/demo. And if you're ready to get started with Jane, you can use our code TRIAD1MO for a 1-month grace period on your new account. When your work is about people, Jane supports the process.
Yeah, wow. I am in awe of how much thought that you have put into this in just creating an environment that is so positive for studying. Because not only are you addressing with the program, but even just recognizing the family system of all of this and trying to add that piece to be a positive influence to your studying. I imagine that the resources and the clients, exam candidates that you're working with just find such a difference in their study process from other programs that they might have had experience with.
It's night and day because here's the thing, we can't just teach test taking skills. Like
Yes.
you bring yourself, your mindset, your family system, you bring everything with you into this process. So if
Yes.
we don't attune to those other pieces, we're swimming, what is that? Going up a swimming up without a paddle, or there's a saying for
Yeah.
that. I
Up,
forget.
up, upriver without a paddle.
Yes, there we go. And so we have to attune to these things. So, you know, we've been doing this for a long time and the program has just gotten better and better as we've learned. We're always watching and learning, what do people need? What are we missing that they need to support them in this process? And
Yes.
so that's just one of those pieces. And even in the audio course, there's a whole module or lesson about how to get your support system on board, how to set boundaries, how to engage people in this process. So you're getting support around this, and then they're also getting support too.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. So I want to back up a little bit because you mentioned how your program is neurodivergent friendly. Talk to me a little bit about some of those details and how your study approaches changes for different learning styles.
Absolutely. So this is one of the things that I think is so important. Because this program was created by someone who's neurodivergent, it automatically, I mean, you just see the neurodivergence everywhere in this program, the influence of it. So
Mhm.
again, going back to the study plan, the fact that there are multiple versions, a more flexible one, that in and of itself just sets the tone that this place is welcoming to people who learn differently.
Mm.
Body doubling is one of the most helpful and effective tools for people with inattention issues.
Mm.
I mean, there are people are writing books about this. There's articles out there about this. It's something that's really catching on. And even neurotypical people benefit from it as well, because when motivation is low, regardless of if it's because of neurodivergence or just again, you don't want to study because you're tired of school,
Right.
it still is helpful to you. So the fact that we have that there's so much support and we really teach people how to break down the content in a way that helps them to learn. We really are proponents of active study methods, which help with retention and recall, particularly for everyone, but especially those who learn at a more gentle pace. Also, because I've been just working with so many neurodivergent people for so long, we know a lot of tricks of ways that you can break down this content or take it in differently to meet you where you are. I mean, we work with
Yes.
people, dyslexia, reading processing issues, ADHD. I've even worked with people who have physical limitations, maybe
Mm.
arthritis,
Okay.
different types of joint pain, things that affect. And so we find creative ways to help them to study and work with their limitations.
Wow. Yeah,
Mhm.
wow. And again, it could be the difference of somebody struggling and somebody passing by just having acknowledgement or resources that address that learning style. Yeah,
Absolutely. And can I say one other thing? Because this is,
please.
again, that part of coaching that just is so fun and so rewarding. Because neurodivergence, especially if it's left untreated or undiagnosed for many years, causes a lot of challenges. that affects people's self-esteem and
Yes.
perceptions of themselves. So people will come into our program with deep-seated beliefs. I can't learn. I'm not a good test taker. I can't
Yes.
do this because they're always trying to fit into a neurotypical world. But here, everything is so customized to you and your journey. So by just having them study in a way that works for them, I've seen people's entire sense of beliefs about their ability to learn
Yes.
change.
Yes.
I've seen people who struggled their whole lives with standardized tests and learning and had to struggle and fight every step of the way, scoring as well as normal neurotypical people do at times.
Yeah. Wow.
And it just totally blows their mind. I remember one person in particular, they just believed that they just couldn't remember things. And I
Mm.
said, well, after you're done doing the Snowball method, which is based in space practice, you won't say that. And she just was like, I don't know about that. By the end of the journey, this person scored almost 600 on this exam.
Wow. Wow. Wow, what a story. And I'd love to even go even further in depth in some of this. Do you have possibly like a hallmark story that comes to mind when you share some of the success of your program?
Absolutely. So a couple years ago, I was working with someone, and honestly, she's like my hero. She passed the test on the 16th try.
Wow.
W And just to be
Wow.
clear, that's 1-6, okay? I just
Yes.
wanna make sure
Wow.
people hear that very clearly. The level of tenacity and determination that she had is unparalleled. I mean, I'm truly in awe of her, and she came to me, and she was open to the process, and we went through this whole entire journey, rebuilt her confidence, found what was missing, helped her to focus and hone her content knowledge and believe that she could do this. And she passed. And now, she's living her best life. And she was a single mother of color as well. So just to have been able to help her to transform her life and her life of her child, and also set her up to be able to contribute more to the field because she had a interest in working with children with autism and wanting to do testing for low income children
Yeah.
of color who often get the diagnosis for that very late due to lack of providers who can work with them. So it was a wonderful story. And she's actually the reason why we started doing video testimonials of people to share their story, to bring these amazing stories to life. She was my first one ever. And so when you go onto our website and you go to our testimonials page, you can find her story. But recently, we've updated it in such a way that the library is now interactive. You can search for stories based on certain criteria. So let's say you've taken the test 5 times. You don't want to hear a story of someone who passed on the first try, right? You want to hear someone who's been in your shoes, or maybe you're a working parent, or maybe English isn't your first language, or whatever it is. You can go on there and search and filter stories by specific criteria to find stories that really resonate with you and can help you to find your motivation to do this.
Yeah. Wow, Erica, I can see how taking the EPPP and passing was such a transformative experience that you've really taken that understanding of the exam and your compassion for learners who might have been in that same boat and really just expanded it to this whole program that just seems so rooted in understanding the exam candidate experience.
Mhm.
It's incredible. I want to park on one specific detail you mentioned about repeat test takers. And I want to just give you an opportunity to talk about how does your program help people rebuild that confidence after failing this exam? Because it's very difficult. So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had people come to our program who are really down and out.
Mhm.
I've seen situations where this test and not being able to pass it has cost people jobs, has cost people their whole life having to lose housing, move back in with family. I mean, completely ripping their life apart. And we've been able to help bring them back from that. And those are some of our most cherished stories. So, because our program really centers on mindset, in fact, when you first get the audio course, the first module is completely about mindset. We don't even let you get to the other parts until we work on that first, because we need to rebuild that confidence. We need to help you to understand how you're currently thinking and feeling about the exam and how we need to transform that so you can get your mojo back. Also, we need to keep you in tuned with why you're doing this. And that's a really big part of that module as well. Because when you failed many times and it feels like your life is falling apart, you lose your vision, you lose your purpose in that process. So we're here to help you get that back. Then once we have that in place, then we begin to help you to understand why it didn't work before. Because again, when you're doing this by yourself, you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing. You don't know why it's not working. So in the audio course, we take you through the common reasons why people fail. That opens up people's minds and helps them to understand what went wrong. So they move away from thinking this test is just against me. I can never do this. This is never going to work, to, oh, wait, I'm realizing I understudied. I didn't prepare this way or that way or whatever. And these things are actually fixable things.
Yes. Wow.
Then also we get your family on board and all that stuff as well, because that's often a barrier that gets in people's way. And then once we have all that in place, now it's time to start learning how to study properly. So the audio course takes you through that. And then, of course, coaching helps you to implement. So it's really a step-by-step process. And again, that community support is so key for repeat test takers, because the shame people are hiding out there. Sometimes people are so ashamed, they won't even talk about this in their personal therapy.
Wow.
Imagine not even, that's the one place where you should be able to say everything, right?
Yes.
And they're hiding there. I'll never forget one time I was starting a group coaching cohort. And as a part of that, we do have people introduce themselves and say when they've graduated, and just to share a little bit about who they are. And I remember one person was like, oh, I graduated in such and such year. And they were kind of like feeling ashamed. Well, the next person actually graduated before them. So now that person is like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not the only one who hasn't been able to do this. Then guess what? The next person that shared had graduated before both of them. And then, believe it or not, the last person that shared, and at this point it went from being this heavy thing to now we were like laughing about it. They were like, well, I've got you all beat. I graduated in such and such year. And so you see how that just transformed something that was so heavy and felt so shameful to now it just put everybody on equal playing field.
Yeah.
And then we were able to move forward.
Yeah. Wow. And it's that community piece that is sort of that extra sauce, right?
Yeah.
To sort of normalize the experience, to have a space where people understand, one thing I really, really like to park on, and I'd love to ask you to step onto the soapbox, is this equity piece in exam prep. And I know you've been very intentional about maybe some of the division between color and passing scores, or learning styles, neurodivergent and passing scores. Talk a little bit about how you would like to see maybe the exam prep piece of licensing exams maybe change with a little bit more equity.
Absolutely. So there's a clear problem here. The pass rates, the racial disparities between them are terrible. And then I don't even think there's been enough research on other factors like neurodivergence and whether the pass rates for that, I can imagine it's not great. And so there's a lot of issues here. And the problem that I see as an exam coach who has a different vantage point is that there's so much focus on the exam itself. And let me be clear, it could improve. Okay. The way questions are worded, how they source material, there is so much that can change there and needs to change. So that goes without saying. Here's the thing though. If that were really the main reason why people are failing, then why do the majority of Crush That Exams clientele, who are overwhelmingly like 90+% people of color, usually hovering around 70-ish% neurodivergent, and who also often utilize accommodations,
Right.
why are they passing at over 75%?
Yes.
Why is our pass rate basically at equity level between the racial groups?
Right.
The test hasn't changed. So what that tells me is that, oh yes, that can improve. It's so much deeper than that. And it's about supporting people through the process. Most people don't really know what they're getting into when they're studying for these exams. They don't know what's required of them, how much they should be studying. There's no clear support. So people are just kind of out there trying to figure it out. And that is where we need to improve things. We need to make sure people have access to high quality materials, which can be difficult when you don't have generational wealth or support. We need to make sure people understand what this test is about, that training sites and schools partner with places like us so that we can share and help people to know what this is all about so that people can start off on the right foot. Because when they do, the odds are actually in their favor that they will pass the exam, even if the exam never changes.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So well said. And, I also think that there's also the financial piece of this and how these costs for exams can be shared amongst either the universities or the employers themselves and not just on the same candidates themselves, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's actually another thing that we do in our program is, again, because we're so systemically oriented and community focused, when you join our program, we actually encourage you to have a meeting with your employer, and we have specific questions
Yes.
that you can ask for more support.
I love
And
it.
I've actually seen people do this and their training sites change policies around
This
things
is a systemic change we're looking for. Yes.
to provide more support to help their trainees to get over this hump.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, Eric, I love what you're saying. I appreciate all the intentionality that you've done around the program and the inclusivity that you've done in order to, provide a program that works for a number of different people, as well as trying to extend this conversation beyond just the exam candidates themselves to the families, to the employers. Again, wonderfully well thought out program. I'm in awe of how awesome of a program and just the stories that you've shared of people being able to have such a tremendous hurdle to then finally get over. This is that missing piece, right? Being able to include comprehensive materials, quality materials, but then attaching the community piece and recognizing and understanding the different contributions that make into the environment for an ideal study environment. Yeah,
Absolutely. We
yeah,
really have to bring it all together to make this work.
yeah.
And we're having
Awesome.
a blast.
So, one final question, and I want to ask this for those that might be feeling stuck or avoidant or terrified for an upcoming exam. What are some of a few practical techniques that they can start today?
Absolutely. The first thing is you need to get around community.
Mhm.
No one should study alone. But here's the thing, it's got to be a positive community. So we actually have a private online community called Exam Crushers because we're here to help people crush that exam. And it's on the platform known as School and SKOOL. And
Mhm.
our community is super positive, and we're really excited to help mental health professionals to get over their exams. Now, for those who may be outside of our field, we encourage you to find some type of community through social media, through whoever that's specific to your field, but you want to make sure that it's a positive place. You want to feel uplifted when you interact. If you walk away feeling dysregulated, stressed out, that is not the community for you. You want to join places that are positive. And that's one of the things we love. We're constantly celebrating people as they move through our program. When people pass, also even as they're on the journey and they're going from phase to phase, we celebrate. We do fun giveaways, motivational posts, all sorts of things just to keep people uplifted. So that's something that you need. Also, start getting really clear about your thoughts. Write them down. Write down everything that you think about the exam, about yourself. Get some support around starting to dismantle your thinking, because mindset is everything and it's 80% of what is going to contribute to your ultimate success. And I would say the last thing, get some coaching support. Of course, if you're in the mental health field, we'd love to coach you and support you. Get some help, because you can save yourself a lot of heartache and disappointment by getting the proper support early on.
Wow. What sage, good sage advice. Good sage advice. So, Eric, as we sort of conclude, I would love for you to share with our listeners where they can learn more about your work, your program, Crush That Exam, and how they can connect with you. Let our listeners know where they can follow up.
Absolutely. If you go to crushthatexam.com, you can visit our website, learn more about what we do. In the upper right-hand corner, you can click to join one of our free Q&A sessions. And we host them every week, and it allows you to come and learn about our program and ask any and every question that you've got about what we do, how we do it, and also just about the test itself. We can clarify everything you need so that you can decide how to move forward in your process. And when you do sign up to join the Q&A session, you'll also be invited to our private community so that you can get a feel for what we do and meet other people who are in our ecosystem.
Wonderful. And you talked a little bit about how important that community piece is. So just having that low barrier of entry can be the difference of people really getting the support they need to overcome this exam. Well, Erica, today I really appreciate your time, and I'm so looking forward for our listeners to be able to engage with you and really kind of dial into the program that you're offering.
Thank you so much. This was so fun. So thank you so
Yeah.
much. I really appreciate it.
And I want to thank you, our listeners, for taking the time to join us. You can follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and more on Behavioral Health Today. If you like our show, you can give us 5 stars and leave us a review. And as always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today. We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.